Hi, David.
What up, dog? My son told me because I was like, "What's up, dude? What's up, dog? What's up, girl? Whatever." And Jake said, "Don't call me dog. Call me dog." And I was like, "Come again?" He's like,
Like,
"Were you calling me DOG or were you calling me DAWG?" And I was like, "Oh, I was calling you DAWG." And he's like, "Don't call me that. Call me DOG." It's like, uh, okay, do you want me to put an emphasis on the O or something, or what? I don't understand. I don't know why that just popped in my head,
what,
but probably
what,
because he's been home. He was home for the first 2 days of this week, sick, and so we spent more time together than I had initially anticipated. But
I'm
what's up,
curious where
dog?
that came from. Like, what,
I asked him, I'm like, do you guys talk about this at school? Like the distinguishing characteristics of DOG versus DAWG, or I don't know. I'm not sure. Because it's like I forgot what movie it is, and I'm sure somebody listening will be like, "Oh, yeah, that's obviously that movie." But when he was like, "Oh man, she's so fat," no, not FAT, PHAT. Like it just reminded me of that.
pretty hot and
Like
tempting?
pretty hot and tempting.
That isn't a movie. I don't remember what that's
It
from either.
was dumb. But that's not what we're talking about today. Dog,
Freaking kids, man.
kids, man.
They say
But
some,
well, that's kind of what we're talking about. There's
yeah,
I want to point our listeners to the manifesto. If you don't get it, awesome. It's an awesome just newsletter that Steven puts together, and it has a ton of great information. And we don't know, like you and I don't know what's going to come out in it. So when I read it, it's like one of the few newsletters that I actually am subscribed to, and I read it. But awesome. This week's was really good. I thought. I think it's the 10th one. Yeah, issue 10,
yeah, issue 10.
and which is that's a milestone, dude. Double digits. But he talked about this thing. um, Viktor Frankl said, it's a quote. It says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." And I really love that quote. But I'm curious what your thoughts on it. But that my mind went somewhere else, directly tied to our conversation in health with the Kinetic Man this month. So where did your mind go?
It went directly to how I respond to my children, on a daily basis. It's funny. I posted something on social media a day or two ago about my daughter straight up calling me out, like on our car ride. We typically just, have really good conversations in the car, and my son was grumpy, and once in a blue moon he's grumpy. Kidding. He's almost grumpy like every single morning. But he took it out on his sister. Like he was angry, and like he like hit her for like no reason whatsoever. And I was like, dude, you can't be like taking out your anger and frustrations on people that don't deserve it. Like, stop doing that. Like, you shouldn't be hitting your sister. And in the car, my daughter was like, "Well, Dad, you do it all the time. Like, if someone's,
You hit your sister, dude? That's freaking weird.
no, she was like, you and Mom get frustrated and angry, with us, or you get angry at Wells, but then you take out your frustration on me, and I don't deserve it." I was like, "Oh man, freaking stab to the heart,
Well, yeah, lesson learned, dude. Don't don't try to defend your daughter anymore. You know what I
right?
mean? Lesson
Stick up
learned.
for yourself."
Stick up for
Uh,
yourself.
but that idea of like my response immediately to a stimulus, from my kids, like I'm terrible at it, man. Like I need to get better at, like, my first response is anger, frustration, annoyance, and I take it out on my kids a lot. Um, so yeah, it's something that I absolutely have to work on, as a dad. So that's what I thought of.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think in general responses, I think we all could, people laugh at the idea of counting to 10 before you respond, or counting to five. You don't have to make it to 10. Usually if the thought goes through your head to count, like I need to count, whatever.
Yeah.
Like that usually is enough time to just kind of like, give you some capacity to recalibrate your response in any situation, right? Like in any interaction, and at least gives you time to pause to be like, okay, is this Like what does this warrant? And that could be life changing. For me, in addition to, because I'm a very reactive, emotionally reactive individual. So like if someone, like I'm very much prone to like fight versus flight, like immediate, like
Yeah.
just reaction, and it's usually not good. And then I usually can't keep things, like yesterday you told me about a conversation, I was immediately going into another conversation, and that conversation impacted the other conversation, and I couldn't bite my tongue. Like I was like, I'm not going to bring this up, and I brought it up immediately. It was the first thing I brought up. And
Yeah.
so like because it was somewhat emotional a topic that could easily facilitate emotions. But where my mind went was, we're talking about health month in the Kinetic Man, the mastermind. And we did a reflection week, and really started, just gave guys an opportunity to get other perspectives. And as we were doing that, I presented a question to the group, and I said, hey, quick show of hands, how many of you have healthy parents that actively engage with you and your kids, if you have kids? And we kind of went around, just looked at hands. And then, it was interesting because a lot of people raise their hands. And then I asked this following question: do you envy your parents' mental and physical health? And those hands went down pretty quick, right? But the important part is, then we dove into the idea that, consider from your parents' perspective when they were our age, whatever age you're at, consider your parents' perspective. And do you think they desired or pictured where they are today when they were our age? And to make that more personal, did you expect to be where you are today when you were in your 20s? If we have people in their 20s listening, this doesn't apply to you. But for a lot of us, we're pretty decently removed from our 20s. And I can just honestly say, when I assess it, and that's not necessarily to imply negative or positive, right? It's just to say, are you where you're at? And so most people probably physically, most people I know are like, yeah, dude, I felt so much better in my 20s, and I was ripped and blah blah blah, but I was dumber, right? And so like there's other things. I'm more mature now. I have a family. Like there's things that you can celebrate in there, but there's also things to acknowledge that you're probably not. There's a gap. And so when I read this, what I thought was interesting, the point of that gap, the whole point of this entire story is that most likely when we were in our 20s, we were not making decisions. We didn't have the context, or we didn't, unless you're super, super self aware, and you had some great mentors, you weren't making decisions in your 20s for your 40s, like very, very intentionally. Like, I'm doing this now so that my cholesterol is not this then, right? Like, we don't really think that way. And similarly, but I do believe we should and we can. And those that do come out ahead, right? And so where we are right now, at this moment in time, you and I could be doing things every single day that will inevitably impact 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, 60 years from now, right? And so when I read this quote, that was in my mind, and it was interesting because the stimulus and response, there's a space, right? The stimulus and response, there's a space. And I would offer that there is a stimulus right now in your life. And everybody listening, there is a stimulus in your life, whether it's, I don't want to be that in the future, or I do want to be that in the future. There's something motivating you. I want to lose this weight. I want to gain muscle, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is, there is a stimulus currently in your life. And there is a gap between when between where you are going to see the results of that. And we have that space. You can create that so intentionally to do the things every single day to get to that place, because you're not going to get to that place overnight if you have a strong goal. Like it's going to take time. Like in TKM, if we have a vision to serve 10,000 dudes. Well, that's not, outside of a miracle in the hand of God being like, here's 10,000 dudes. Like, that's not going to happen overnight. That could take 10 years. That could take, I don't know what it takes. But every single day, if we're making a step, we're recording podcasts, we're doing the things that required, we are choosing how, through our decision, we have the power to choose our response to drive from that stimulus to a desired outcome. It'll probably look different, right? It'll probably look different than we anticipate. But the point is, just like when you're dealing with your kids, you respond like you should own that junk and look in the mirror, not you, like all of us should look in the mirror and be like, that was my choice to respond that way. Like nobody can make you feel a certain way. You have to allow them to make you feel a certain way. Nobody's going to make you gain 20 pounds in your, 10, 15, 20 year self. Nobody's making you do that. You're choosing to do that. And everything you do today, you should just own that and be like, you know what? I'm making a choice. I got the space. I'm making a choice. And then be content with it, right? Because you made it. You made it. And the power's in your hands. That's what's awesome about it. So that's what it made me think.
Yeah, man, it's intentionality, right? It's that space between knowledge and action, right? And knowing that nothing will happen, no change will take place unless you move from knowledge to action, right? Yeah, I mean health. Like there's so much that I've changed in my life through our conversations, through our readings, through our discussions in TKM. Um, I hired a health coach last year. I've made drastic improvements to my own personal health, my own mental health, spiritual health, um, and I know that that's going to get me to a place long term at 80 that I want to be. Um, and so, like, everyone has that choice. Everyone has the ability to change through taking action and making different choices. I can choose to respond differently to my child next time because I have the knowledge to, and I can intentionally take the step of walking away, breathing for 10 seconds, knowing that my response immediately is probably not going to be the response that I would desire long term. And so that's where we're at. Like that's what we're doing. That's what we're, you know, having conversations about, learning about, and then taking action on. And it's awesome, man. I love it.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And the last thing on that, I don't want to lose that last line in that quote. In our response lies our freedom. I'm sorry, lies our growth and our freedom.
Yeah.
In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Dude, that's so magical. Growth and freedom lie in a response, which the response is completely in our power. So ipso facto, within your power that you can own is your growth and your freedom. And that's where we should live in that, dude. Every day. Every day. You know what I mean?
Every day I do.
Every day.
Take action.
See a dog. DAWG.
See a dog.
Horse man.
DOOOOG.
See
Doog. Bye.